أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Respected brothers and sisters, may Allah reward all of us for our participation in the majalis for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. May Allah grant comfort to the heart of our living Imam as he remembers the tragedy of his grandfather Imam Hussein alayhi salam. May we be counted among the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and through means of these types of gatherings that we can have the tawfiq to be their true followers and their true Shia. Alhamdulillah, we have the honor of being present at a gathering that's inspired by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. These gatherings have the opportunity to be life transforming. So many people, they say that there's a moment in a majlis just like this where they're sitting and something changes within them. It's as if sometimes you can think of a dam that breaks and the water starts to flow through. That is tawfiq from Allah. And it's these types of gatherings that have this type of possibility, but we have to be engaged. We have to come with an open heart and an open mind and try to be seeking that inspiration for the sake and from the blessings of remembering Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his martyrdom. Our topic for these nights is the path to Saʿādah. And I want to make it clear here that when we're using the word Saʿādah, we're using it in the way that it's been used in Quran and Hadith, which may be different than the way that it's used commonly in different languages today. Saʿādah in its original form, in its classical form, refers to something higher than just an emotional state, something higher and deeper than just a shallow feeling of happiness. Saʿādah refers to being truly blessed, having deep inner satisfaction, and truly being successful. If there's one thing that all of us want, is we want Saʿādah, because we know that if we're given temporary pleasure or temporary shallow happiness, but it's not in the path of what we're created for, then that might actually be shaqawa or shaqa, a type of misery. What we're looking for is that deep and true happiness and success. And we've been talking about different ways of attaining that. And this is inspired from Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself, who on the day of Ashura, when he addresses the enemy army, he says that the one who has been tempted by the lower dunya and has failed that test, that person is shaqi. That person is wretched. They're the loser. They might have the dunya. They might have a lot of wealth and property and fame and fortune, but they're not on the path of success. The path of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is the path of true success. That's what we're seeking. And over the nights, we've been able to look at concepts like taklif, the framework of obeying Allah as being a means of attaining true success and true blessedness and true happiness and true felicity. And last night, we began looking at the importance of treating other people well, having good relationships with others. And we said that this is also one of the means of being able to attain Saʿādah, or true happiness. Some of the ahadith that we quoted last night, I want to repeat them because they're going to help us to center our the speech topic for tonight. One of them is from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Min sa'adatil mar'i husnu khulqihi, wa min shaqawatihi su'u khulqihi." What leads somebody to true success is when they have husnul khulq, when they deal with other people in a good way. But when they deal with other people in a bad way, that's going to lead to their ultimate losing out. They're having a wretched life. And the other hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, fi luzum al-haqqi takunu as-sa'ādah. When somebody is sticking with the truth and sticking with haqq and huquq, then that's when they're going to be able to get sa'ādah. And huquq meaning that they're observing the rights of others. And one of the things we said yesterday, we used an example of a story, which is a story of Ja'far ibn al-Qasim. Ja'far was not somebody who was supporting the imams. But when Imam Hadi alayhi salam saw him, if you remember the story, Imam Hadi alayhi salam took advantage of this opportunity to treat him in a certain way that would allow Ja'far to realize his mistake. He gently asks him a couple of questions. He says that, how long are you going to be asleep for? How long are you going to stay in the state of slumber? Has it not come time for you to awaken and for you to wake up? And Ja'far says that when he said those words, they penetrated my heart. And I fainted. And from that point onwards, I was a follower of haqq. This was one of the many examples we have from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, which tell us that they would never write off anybody. We have this expression, we say to write off somebody, meaning that you look at somebody and say that this person is not worth it. Now, let's be honest, brothers and sisters. This is something that maybe many of us sometimes do, not even thinking about it too much. We kind of judge somebody and say that this person's not worth it anymore. And this is where we need to first look at what do we think about a human being, starting with ourselves. Do I see myself as being an honored individual, an honored creation of Allah? Because if I do, then I can start to treat other people and see them in that perspective as well. But if I look at myself in a way that I'm not really worth that much, I look at the mirror, I'm say that, what's this? Then there's a problem here. I'm not seeing myself for the way that God sees me. I'm misaligned. I need to correct myself. And there's one tip or trick or method I want to mention here that all of us can reflect on. Sometimes you need these practical tips, right? Things you can take away. I want you to ask this one question of yourself. Okay, and this is inspired from the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Ask yourself this one question. That is it the case that the fact that you believe in God and you do acts of goodness based on that belief, is that something that everyone else has out there? Right? Has everyone else, are they honored with the knowledge of God and the ability to perform good acts based on that knowledge? And the answer is, of course, that's not the case. So what that tells us is that not only are we honored because of our creation, but we're honored because we've been chosen for our hearts to contain the beautiful blessing of Iman. You know, when you go to a museum, they have certain artifacts on display, okay? But if you go to the storeroom of the museum, like what's locked away from the public, you're going to see there's a lot more things that the museum has. They pick maybe 10% or 20% or 15% or something like that. They pick a small percentage of their collection and they take care, they showcase it, they put it in nice showcases, they put nice labels so people can understand what's there. And this is what they tell people: come to our museum so you can see these things. Brothers and sisters, if you have Iman in your heart, you've been chosen to showcase the wonder of Allah's Iman. You're part of that display. Allah has chosen and says that this is my special servant of Allah that I have chosen to put Iman in their hearts, and they're doing good acts on that basis. A lot of times we don't think about that, right? We think that, oh, it's something that I was born into this faith. Maybe, you know, let's say there's those who were born, I was born in this faith, it's just like that. It's like, no. Look, these things are not random, right? You are on that showcase. Allah has chosen you. These are very important things for us to understand. Now, let's move on to the discussion for today. What we want to discuss, inshallah, is the treatment that we ought to have with others on the basis of huquq. Okay, huquq meaning rights and responsibilities. We've been talking about taklif. We said taklif is this framework. Part of taklif is how we deal with one another. Islam teaches us that there is a code of conduct that we need to have when we're dealing with whoever it is out there. And this code of conduct is called the code of huquq. In the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they tell us that everything that we interact with has a certain type of code of conduct that we're supposed to have with it. One time, there's these beautiful stories that are told. I want to share a few of them with you. One time, Imam Baqir alayhi salam was asked, he said, he was teaching people that everything has a certain way of dealing with it. So there were some people who were kind of making fun of the sayings of the Imam. So they go to him and they're having a meal with him. And they say that, you're saying that everything has a certain way of code of conduct. Here's the table spread, right? The sufre. Like, what about this right here? Does this have a certain way of conduct and code? He says, yes, of course. Right? When you sit at the table spread, you should say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. When you leave it, you say Alhamdulillah. When food is placed in front of you, you take from that food. When food is placed like over there, you don't take from that food. You focus on this food right here, you don't focus on that food over there, and so on and so forth. Then they bring a pitcher of water, like a jug of water, and they say, what about this? Okay? Because they're thinking that this is just a simple thing here. There's no Islam when it comes to the jug of water, right? That's what in their mind. In their mind, Islam is like prayers, fasting, jihad, hajj, right? What about a jug of water? Is there any Islam when it comes to a jug of water? The Imam says, yes. With the jug of water as well, there's hudud, right? There's parameters, there's a code of conduct, right? You take water from here, you don't take water from there, right? And when you see that water, the Imam ﷺ says that you thank Allah and you say that thanks be to Allah. I'm grateful to Allah that He made this water azba, something that I can drink, and He did not make it salty and difficult to drink on account of my sins. Okay, no, subhanAllah, I don't know if we ever think about this, that what if there was a different system out there? That Allah changed the taste of water depending on how good of a servant of Allah I am. Right? Is that possible? Could Allah do that? Of course He could do that. Right? But He makes it so that whether I'm a rebellious servant or I'm a dutiful servant, the water is still adban ujaja, especially here in Sweden. MashaAllah, you guys have very nice fresh water, right? It's always like that. You turn on the tap, the water's there, right? This needs to be acknowledged. This is part of the protocol when it comes to even a jug of water. So, brothers and sisters, if a tablecloth has a certain code of conduct and a jug of water has a certain code of conduct, what about human beings? Of course. Islam is a religion which is all-encompassing, that even when it comes to human beings, there's a certain code of conduct that's part of my taklif to observe when it comes to dealing with other human beings. And this is called huquq. It's very important, that when we discuss huquq, we understand that there are specific huquq and there are general huquq. A lot of times we talk about, what is the right of our parents? What is the right of a spouse over the other? What is the right of a children over the parents? And those are important, very important to learn about. But there are general huquq that apply to every single human being. And there are general huquq that apply to every believer. And sometimes we see that, mashallah, there's a great level of knowledge and practice when it comes to other aspects of Islam. But when it comes to knowing and observing the general huquq, we see that this is one of the weakest areas of practice for our communities. And so inshallah, that's what we're going to focus on tonight. I'm going to introduce a couple of these general huquq and talk about them. It's a very practical discussion because everyone has relationships with others. So everyone inshallah can relate to it, especially those people who live in families. But if you don't, then inshallah there'll come a time when you have families. Inshallah you can help me with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, before I get to discussing those, every night I've been selecting a story for inspiration that we've been centering our discussion on. The story for tonight, I want to first introduce that. This is a very interesting story, one of those that really gets you to think. So there was a servant of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. His name was Kafur. Okay, Kafur al-Khadim. He was a khadim. Imam Hadi alayhi salam, one time he tells him that, Kafur, I want you to do something. Okay, I want you to bring me water and place it near the place I'm going to do my prayers, so that's ready for me when I want to do my prayers. Okay, simple ask. He asks him a simple thing to do. So Kafur says that no problem. He goes and takes care of something else. He comes back home, and the Imam alayhi salam has gone to sleep. He's going to wake up early for his prayers. And for some reason, Kafur forgets about that thing. So Kafur is, resting himself. And then suddenly he wakes up in the middle of the night and he hears the Imam alayhi salam getting ready for ibadah. And immediately, what does he think to himself? Right? He thinks that, I forgot to do what the Imam asked me to do. Okay? I failed a responsibility. Right? What is he going to do? So he got scared. He's like, maybe I'm going to get fired. Maybe he's going to yell at me. Maybe he's going to get angry at me. Maybe he's going to throw me out. I don't know. What is it going to be? And sure enough, when the Imam alayhi salam is about to do his ibadah, he calls out to Kafur. And he says, Kafur, come here. And these are lessons for us, brothers and sisters. When we get a glimpse of how the home of the Ahlul Bayt actually works, right? This is a great inspiration for all of us. So Kafur is there, and sure enough, Imam Hadi calls to him, Kafur, come here. And Kafur is really hesitant, right? Because he thinks that he's going to get a scolding, and maybe the Imam is going to get angry at him. But what happens is that eventually he goes to the Imam ﷺ, and the Imam ﷺ has a question where he says that, Kafur, you know that usually when I do my wudu in the mornings, I like to use cold water. Tell me, why did you warm the water up? Okay? Now, first of all, question, why is it that Imam used to use cold water? Because it's a type of thing where sometimes if you choose the easy way all the time, then there's no test, right? Sometimes you gotta challenge yourself a little bit. So the Imam ﷺ was used to using cold water because it was the winter time, and it was a way of him increasing his reward. I'm not saying that we should do this, but for him is a way of increasing his reward with Allah to use cold water at that time. Question number 2, where did the water come from? Kafur is looking at the water and he's looking at the Imam. He says that, I have to tell the truth, I forgot completely to do anything with the water. So the Imam looks at the situation and what does he do? He says, Alhamdulillah. All praise belongs to Allah. When Allah blesses us with something, we're thankful for it. And when He gives us a rukhsa, He gives us an opportunity to have ease, we accept that from Him. Now what happened here? Right? What happened? This was a miracle. This is a miracle where the Imam alayhi salam, right, realized what had happened. He was not going to get angry at Kafur. He was not going to, like, let's say hit him or anything like that. He was a gentle Imam, just like all of our Imams. Sajiyatukumul karam, as we said last night. And here, one of the lessons we can learn from this is that when somebody deals with other people on the basis of dignity, then Allah will come in and step in and cover people's faults for one another. Okay, this is a very important lesson. Imagine we have families, right, where Allah is intervening and giving that tawfiq and the blessings so that the relationships are blessed. Right? That's what we're looking for. That's when we're told in hadith that min Saʿādah al-mar husnu khulqihi, this is what it means, that when you practice good akhlaq with others and you have good relationships, then this can lead to a type of special blessings in the home. So this is one of the lessons that we learn from this beautiful story of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Haqq number 1. So this is the first haqq that must be observed with all believers without exception, even when the other person is not observing it. This is one of the main points here. Even when the other person is not observing it, it's still wajib for me to observe it with every believer. It's the haqq of respect. It is imperative. We have to have this in our lives, that we treat other believers with respect. And that means our spouses, our children, our parents, our fellow believers, even when we disagree with them, even when they are not respectful to us. What is the hadith behind this? It's famous hadith, Al-mu'minu a'adhamu hurmatan min al-Ka'bah. The believer has more respect and sanctity than even the Kaaba. And in the books of fiqh, in the books of akhlaq and adab, the types of disrespect that are haram are detailed. Okay, for example, when somebody does ihana, somebody, like, let's say, insults another person, when they make fun of them, when they say rude things, when they do something to lower their status, to lower their dignity, all of these are examples of things which are haram and forbidden, and they go against one of the basic huquq that is given to us in Islam. Sometimes we hear, family members, for example, using certain expressions. They start, for example, using animal expressions. You're this thing, you're that thing, you're lower than even like a dog or a pig or these type of things. All of these are absolutely haram. And they go against the basic haqq that person has on us. Now, this is something that's known to us, but practicing it is actually something that's difficult. When we hear families and the struggles that they go through, a lot of times it goes back to this one principle, that are we observing the principle of respect and hurma and ihtiram? I'm going to give you a couple of examples that maybe we haven't thought about, particularly around children and parents. You see, and these are things to really think about. You see sometimes that when you see a young child, like maybe they're 6 months old or 1 year old, you see that, mashallah, they get a lot of love, right? It's not hard for a young child to get a lot of love. But ask yourself this question, that when the people who are showing them that love, when they're playing with them, do they also show them the respect as well? Okay, now just think about this. What do I mean by that? Sometimes you see that the way that people deal with even a young child is that they throw them around, they tease them, right? They tease them to make them kind of laugh or make them surprised. Sometimes they'll go and they'll scare them, right, with something. Like I myself, I remember when I was a child, right? For some reason, we had this animal, it's called a squirrel, okay? And for some reason, when I was a child, I was scared of squirrels. You know, different kids have these things. So sometimes, in order to get laughs, you know, some of the uncles, right, they would just kind of randomly yell out squirrel, right? And I would get scared and everyone would be laughing, right? Now, these type of behaviors, sometimes they're very common culturally. Like you'll see that a young child will be taken and then they'll be like flung around and thrown this way and thrown that way. Right? Now, simple question, and this is taken from the teachings of one of the great scholars who passed away in recent times, but he was a teacher of tarbiyah and how to raise children. His name was Ayatollah Ha'iri Shirazi. He says in his book, he says that imagine on one hand, our Prophet is telling us that a child is a commander in the first 7 years. They're a commander. Now, when have you ever seen the commander being teased and the commander being used as a toy for other people? It doesn't work that way, right? Now, don't get me wrong, right? It's not that we shouldn't play with our children. Of course we should play with them. But there's a play which has dignity and respect, and then there's a play which involves a type of disrespect and insulting and teasing. And we said, oh, they're just a kid. Sometimes you see, when they get a little bit older, you see that the parents are, because they think that the kid is just a kid, they'll talk about the silly things that the child does, the embarrassing things that the child does, and they'll share it publicly with others. And it's like, wait a minute. The child is also أَعْظَمُ حُرْمَةً مِنَ الْكَعْبَةِ. The child also has more sanctity than the Kaaba. What right do we have to go and do this? One of the stories that's used to, a wonderful story to describe the position of children in Islam is a story that you've heard before, but maybe you haven't heard the whole story. There was a time when our Prophet ﷺ was praying in the masjid, and Imam Hussein ﷺ used to, when the Prophet would go into sujood, Imam Hussein at this age, he would go and climb on the back of our Prophet. And he would see it as an opportunity to have a ride. Okay, so you know that. You know about this, about our Prophet. But this is one part that's very interesting that sometimes is mentioned. One time, there was a Jewish man who saw Imam Hussein on the back of the Prophet. He saw the Jama'ah taking place, and he saw how the Prophet delayed for some time until gently he got up. And he was just, struck with wonder. And afterwards he goes to the Prophet and he says that, is this the way that you deal with your children? We don't have anything like this in our religion. You know what the Prophet says? The Prophet says that if you were to have iman in Allah and you were to have iman in Rasulullah, then you would deal with children in a similar type of love as well. So that man on the spot, he says that I believe I have iman in Allah and I have iman in His Messenger. And the hadith says that he was so overwhelmed by the karam and the nobility and the honor and the dignity that the Prophet had that he became a Muslim on the spot. This is very important. Okay, we see that sometimes parents take an opposite route. Right? Their number one approach to their children is, as we said last night, to either be very critical or to be overly protective or to just be like, okay, you're on your own. Islam says don't take any one of those approaches, but rather take the approach of dignity and connection and honoring them. We have a tradition which says, from Imam Saʿādah, he says, Man da'a ala waladihi awrathahu Allahu al-faqr. Okay, what does that mean? You see sometimes parents, especially mothers, may Allah reward them for all their sacrifice and what they do for their children, they get frustrated with their kids. And at a certain point, they're like, oh man, I wish my child could, then they say, actually make a dua against their child. They say, I wish my child could, let's say, die, right? They get so frustrated. You know what the hadith said? The hadith says that don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. If you do that, you know who's going to lose out? You're going to lose out. You're going to be the one who's now going to have faqr. You're going to have poverty in your life. That's not the approach. Yes, it's frustrating, but you're supposed to have hilm. You're supposed to be, have patience. You're supposed to connect. Another hadith from Imam Saʿādah, there's a man who comes to me and says that, he asks him for advice. The Imam tells him, be kind to your parents. Then Imam Saʿādah, the man says to him, he says that my parents have passed away. They're left this world. You know what the Imam tells him? He says then, be good to your child. Okay, normally we always talk in the lectures and we hear about birrul walidain, or be kind to your parents, which is extremely important. The Quran mentions it many times. The Quran doesn't specifically go into detail about being kind to your children because that's something that's supposed to be obvious, right? We're supposed to love them, honor them. They're our children. They're an amanah from Allah. But in today's world, and maybe it's a sign of the end of times, you see that sometimes parents just give up, right? There's like, my child, whatever, and then start making dua against them. Recently, there was somebody complaining. He was saying that, my mother thinks that I worship the devil, right? And then he says the only way that I can get her to listen to me is if I start yelling at her. Even if I yell at her, then that doesn't work. Then sometimes I have to use foul language in order to get my point across, right? Sometimes that's the type of home that you can have where there's so much conflict. We have a beautiful hadith from Imam Ali I want to share with you. This is one of those hadith that we should really write in gold. He says, Man hasuna khulquhu kathura muhibbuhu wa anisatin nufusu bih. This is probably the most practical hadith that I've ever seen when it comes to how we're supposed to make good relationships with other people. And the key to success. He says what? He says, whoever has good dealings with other people, they have good akhlaq with other people, man hasuna khulquhu, number one, what's going to happen? Kathura muhibbuhu, meaning that those who love that person are going to become many, and the nufus, the hearts and souls of others are going to have uns with this person. They're going to find a heart-to-heart connection. This is what the Ahlul Bayt teach us, to have heart-to-heart connections with other mu'mineen, with our family members. How do we do that? By having good akhlaq. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So brothers and sisters, we talked about the importance of respect, okay, and we talked about there's a lot of examples. I just gave a few, especially when it comes to parents and children. The second one I want to mention, inshallah, and then come to the close for my lecture, is the importance of controlling our anger. I can't tell you how many times we hear from children in our communities that one or both of my parents always get angry. Sometimes they say that I love my dad, I love my mom, but I just wish they wouldn't get so angry. We're coming to the majalis of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We want to learn from the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Please, brothers and sisters, one of the lessons we can take from the Ahlul Bayt is to be people who have our anger in check. One of the ways of destroying the future of a child is by being a parent who always gets angry. We have incredible hadith about this. Our Prophet says, "Ma min jur'atin ahabbu ilallahi min jur'atain." There's two swallows that are most beloved to Allah. One of them is jur'atu ghaydhin yarudduha mu'minun bihilmin. When a believer swallows their anger and they control it with hilm, with patience and forbearance. And the second one is وَجُرْعَةُ جَزَعٍ يَرُدُّهَا مُؤْمِنٌ بِصَبْرٍ. When somebody has stressed out and they're worried about something, they take a gulp and they control it by having sabr and they restrain themselves. These are beloved to Allah. There's one time when this one Bedouin Arab comes to our Prophet and he says, teach me something which is jawami'ul kalim. Tell me something which summarizes everything I need to know in order to be a good believer. The Prophet tells him, أَمُرُكَ أَلَّا تَغْضَبْ. I order you that you should not get angry. And then man says, give me something else. He says, I ordered you that you shouldn't get angry. The man says, give me something else. He says once again, I order you that you should not get angry. And the man realized that within this is the secret to how we're supposed to deal with other people. Brothers and sisters, one of the things we have to ask ourselves is that why do we get angry at other people? Most of the time, you ask people, you say, why are you getting angry at your spouse? Why are you getting angry at your child? They'll say that because I want them to get better. I want them to fix the mistake. Okay, no problem. Second question, how effective is it to get angry at somebody if you want them to change their behavior? What's the effectiveness rate? Right? The answer is probably maybe 1%, 2%. Because in reality, most people, when other people get angry at them, they don't fix their behavior. They just back off and they become stubborn and they wait for that opportunity that they can escape from this person's wrath and live a life where they're not judged like this. It's very important. Most of the time, we disrespect and we get angry hoping we're going to change the person for the better, but they change for the worse. Very practical tip, okay, because I don't want to just talk theory. If it's a case that, let's say one of us is struggling with a family member, let's do a simple thing. Let's ask ourselves that in one day, how many of my comments and my stances that I take with them, our conversations, how many of them do they involve saying positive things, things that are filled with love and respect, and how many of it involves criticism and anger? Usually, when we actually do this type of muhasabah and we actually list it out, we'll see that the ratio is much more about criticism and about anger and about shaming them than it is about saying something which is positive and connecting with them. And experience has shown that when a mother or a father or a brother or a sister or a child switches the ratio and they have maybe 4 or 5 to 1, for every one thing they want to say that's maybe critical, they have 5 things that they say that are positive. If we switch that, then suddenly the relationships start to reverse. Try it, right? Sometimes people say that, no, I'm never going to have a good relationship with this person. No, just try this one simple thing. Switch the ratio. Being able to control our anger, being able to respect others, these are some of the keys to having proper hukuk and observing the hukuk of others. If we're able to do that, then inshallah, this is one of the ways of attaining Saʿādah. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Finally, brothers and sisters, as a preparation for the musibah, one of the inspirational stories and also sad stories we have from the events leading up to Karbala, Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. It's a beautiful narration which shows us again about the karam of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, their nobility and their dignity and how they honored other people. Ubaydullah ibn al-Hurr al-Ju'afi, he's someone who's quite well known for being somebody who couldn't make it. He failed at a critical time. Ubaydullah was trying to escape from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He didn't want to meet him. He didn't want to go to Karbala. But it just so happens that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, at a certain point, he sees, when he pitches his tents, he sees that there's a tent with a sword, a spear, and a horse outside of it. He asks, whose tent is it? They tell him it's the tent of Ubaydullah ibn Hurr al-Ju'afi. Imam Hussein alayhi salam sends a messenger to him. He says, please come to me. I want to talk to you. But he refuses. Then Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself puts on his own shoes and he goes to the tent of Ubaydullah. When Ubaydullah sees him approaching, he sees Imam Hussein alayhi salam is there with his family members around him. And he makes a comment. The comment he makes, he says, مَا رَأَيْتُ أَحَدًا قَطْ أَحْسَنْ وَلَا أَمْلَعَ الْعَيْنِ مِنَ الْحُسَيْنِ. He said, I've never saw anybody who's as beautiful and has filled my eye with so much delight when I saw Hussein. And the thing which triggered the compassion and the softness in my heart is when I saw him with his family members. Imagine what kind of love and respect Imam Hussein had for his children and his family members, that even Ubaydullah, who was trying to run away from Imam Hussein Islam, at that point he says that when I saw that, I was just struck. Right? It just filled my heart with so much compassion for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But of course, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam asks him, he says that, why don't you join me? He says that I've been trying to escape you. I don't want to participate. But here's my horse, take it. It's the fastest horse. It can outrun any other horse. Here's my sword, take it. It has fought many battles. It can serve you well. Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells him that, O Ubaydullah, if it's the case that you want to give me your sword and you want to give me your horse, but you don't want to give me yourself, then we have no need for your sword and we have no need for your horse. It's you that we wanted. Inshallah, when the Imam of our time asks us to be there on a daily basis, being an abd of Allah, we will be there. We won't make excuses and we'll do what we have to do. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.